And today we have Andrew Bauman here with us, and I am looking forward to this conversation. If you follow him, you know that he talks a lot about the pornified mindset, and I'll have him describe that for you because I'm sure there's people here listening, seeing that in the title, and wondering what is a pornified mindset. And so today we're going to be talking about the impacts of porn and male entitlement teachings in our culture that lend itself to abuse. And in the pornified mindset is definitely a fuel to domestic abuse. So we will be discussing more of that today, and I'm looking forward to it. So, Andrew, could you introduce yourself as well and tell about your work and what you do?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I love your all's work and glad to support it and to be a partner in this work. And so yeah, I'm Dr. Andrew Bauman. My wife and I run the Christian Counseling Center for Sexual Health and Trauma, and we work mostly with intensives, doing couples therapy, doing abuse trainings, and working. I work with the men and abuse issues, trauma issues, and a lot of unwanted sexual behavior as well. And so that's kind of our specialty and what we focus on.
Wow, we are grateful for you and the work that you're doing. And I'm excited to partner with you today and be able to talk about these things. And for those who are joining in, we're also in Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So definitely share this video, invite others to watch. We have a moment this month to share and talk about domestic abuse with an audience that normally may not be paying attention. We have a voice and ability to come in and speak out to these things. And so share our videos. And also, we're in a fundraiser right now of $140,000 is our goal by the end of the month. And we have a matching grant of $40,000 right now. And I'm so excited. We had some donations come out, and right now we're at about 15,000, not including the matching grant. So we are grateful for each one of our partners and invite you into the work too. And let's get started with today's interview. And welcome, Carrie. I see somebody saying hello. So yes, let us know where you're watching from, and we're glad that you're here. And our first question for today is, how does porn impact men's view of women?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really subtle at the beginning, meaning it's this is what makes porn such a scary thing. Often it starts in a curiosity. For myself, I was about 13 years old, and my world did not talk about sexuality. Grew up in conservative Christian evangelical home, and we didn't talk about sex. All I heard when I went to church was no, don't do it. Sex is bad until you're married. And then that was it. And yet I was feeling, as my body was changing, as I was growing up into a young man, like I had questions and I had no place to go. And so internet pornography had just become a thing, the internet. And I began to seek out answers. And so, in a sense, I have a lot of compassion on that young little boy who felt so orphaned and had felt nowhere to go to learn what sexuality was. What did the body of a woman look like? How does my body work? And so, it began in an innocent way, and then slowly it begins to entrap. Slowly, it begins to turn in to a pacifier for our woundedness. And that's the case for me. It grew and grew and became more and more dangerous. And I couldn't stop. And so for 13 years, I used porn. And what that did is it slowly changed the way I viewed women, right? Because a study, I believe it was in 2010, said that 87% of pornography shows violence against women. 87%. And out of that 87%, 95% of those videos showed women enjoying it, enjoying the violence, or just passive in the violence. So, what do you think that does to my 13-year-old brain as I begin to consume countless hours of these images? It's going to change how I view women. And that's what begins to develop the pornographic mindset, right? And then out of the pornographic mindset, and this is what I call the pornographic style of relating, we begin to relate to our world pornographically. So it starts by consuming, and we begin to view, have the pornographic mindset. And then it leads into how we live. It leads into how we treat our partners. And that's, yeah, that's mostly how it works. And the sad part is then when systems like church systems or theological systems then support that type of behavior, which is what I'm really passionate about.
Yes, and that's something I really appreciate about your work is I had never really thought of before the pornified mindset. And I know some of the women that we serve, their husbands may not look at porn
Mm,
anymore, but it's been so embedded in their hearts. A lot of times maybe they didn't deal with the issues that the porn put inside their hearts and they still had a pornified mindset and
exactly.
brought it into their marriage and it still impacts and causes a lot of abuse and hurt and pain. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and as you mentioned, you teach a lot about the pornified mindset and how it must be rooted out even after the addiction to porn is conquered. In order to view women healthy, like in a sexually healthy way, and view your partner in a way that's equal, can you talk more about that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, just stopping looking at naked women on the internet, that's kind of the easy part.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of the first step, and then it takes many times years to undo the damage that's been done. Literally, the brain damage to rewire the neural pathways takes 90 days of sobriety from porn, masturbation, just to begin to change the brain. And so it takes a lot of time to change the brain and to begin to view women differently. And the way I language it is we have to change our relationship to beauty. We in a sense, porn teaches us how to be a consumer of beauty, be a devourer of beauty rather than to honor beauty, right?
Mm,
And so the metaphor I like to use is when I lived in Seattle for 15 years, the days that Mount Rainier would come out, it's just, towering mountain over the city, and most of the time it's so gray you couldn't see it. But when it would come out and you would see it, it would bring awe, right? It would bring a reverence. It would bring this wow, like beautiful. That is the posture that we can take for beauty versus objectification teaches us to take, right? Or we watch a woman, jogging by and we devour her, take her clothes off in our mind, and right? It's so dehumanizing. It's
mhm.
so dehumanizing. And what does it mean to be awakened by beauty? Because I think we're made for heaven. We're made for beauty. We're made for God. And yet, not to devour it, not to take from it, but to actually share in it and honor it.
Ooh, I love that. I love that, and so many times in our culture too, I know Sheila Gregor has done a lot of work with this, is, we as women are taught to feel bad about beauty, to feel bad if we are attracting men or
Mm,
making them lust
yeah,
towards us, and I love that how you're bringing out the point is honoring it. It's okay to wear a beautiful dress,
yeah,
or to fix our hair and to make ourselves beautiful because God that's we're made in the image of God too, and we're not responsible for men who choose to devour that.
exactly.
A lot of times that has been placed on women in the church. And I'm looking forward to getting into our next topic, which is what are the most prominent teachings in the church that allow men to excuse a pornified mindset of women?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long you have to take, but I'm just finishing up a whole book, just finishing a whole book about that. And one of the chapters is damaging theologies, right? And so there's quite a few. I don't know how many I can remember off the top of my head, but obviously modesty is one. That's a one that comes to my head. The submission has been so misused and weaponized. I mean, there's so many, and what we have to do. Women be silent in church. Taking a few scripture verses and creating a whole theology of women being quiet. When you actually study the verse, you study the church at that time, you realize, most likely it was two or three women that were causing disruption. They were causing disruption because they were so excited that they finally had a voice and a seat at the table. It's because the early church was pushing back against the patriarchal culture. And so they were excited. They were talking there and he's like, "Chill out, ladies. Like stop. Go home. Talk to your husbands about it. Like stop disrupting the service. We got work to do." Case closed. Versus all women of all time be quiet in church, right? So those types of verses that are then weaponized to use against women. I mean, I've seen it firsthand working with a couple. This was early in my therapeutic career, and the husband would pray out loud verses over his wife so that she would submit to his sexual fetishes, and she was so uncomfortable, right? And of course, it's and yet she was felt so guilty, like, "Oh, I need to please God," versus like, no, he's actually weaponizing scripture to
Mhm.
push you past your own boundaries and to make you feel uncomfortable, so that he can deal with his own unaddressed wounding. He's using her in such an unhealthy ways and weaponizing scripture. And so we see this time and time again. And there's a lot of work to be undone, especially to rescue women from these types of damaging theologies.
Yes, that's really good. Can you talk about that too? The word submission. I mean, I would love to get into it with you. I know you've done a lot of research on it. Like when
Mhm.
people talk about submission, how they use that as a way to excuse a pornified mindset. I know you mentioned a few of those with verses, but can you go further into that? Because I know that has been used heavily among the women that we serve.
Yeah, I mean, basically, what is would you rather be Christ-like or porn-like? Um, and what we find is so many men, because they've been inundated with pornography, and this is pastors included. Barna's 2014 study said 50% of pastors had some type of relationship with porn, right? So if that's the case, then they're basically saying, submit to me sexually, be like this porn star, be like what I'm watching in porn, be this fantasy, um, rather than actually be Christ-like. And then women, that's what the Bible verses are used, weaponized to submit to an unhealthy, totally toxic way of being, right?
Mhm.
And so it starts from this deep sin, this deep entitlement, and it's not okay. It's not healthy. It's not Christ-like. And so, what would it mean for us to focus on being Christ-like rather than porn-like? And that's the main thing. But I'm pulling up some of the damaging theologies here from my new book called Safe Church. We talk about egalitarianism, complementarianism, headship, submission, authority, grace, and forgiveness. That's another one that I forgot. Basically, weaponizing forgiveness, right? Rather than understanding, no, forgiveness takes time. Forgiveness actually means, like, instead of making it cheap forgiveness, what does it mean for actually a husband to begin to not just say words, but actually live differently, treat you differently? And forgiveness will come as he begins to live differently. And again, you can forgive him, but not be in relationship with him. You can have boundaries and say, "Yeah, I do forgive you. I do set you free." But no, we're not going to continue to be married because of what you've done. Stuff like that. Some other damaging things we talked about: modesty, purity culture. Um, Also, I talk about depravity. Basically, how do I put this? Basically, before we were sinful, God made us good. Our goal is to get back to our deep goodness. I believe we all bear the image of God. We are more glorious than we are depraved, and yet, again, that's another thing that can be weaponized. Um, so I could go on and on. Marriage, divorce, those are another thing, another theology that's weaponized, and also stigmatized in the church, and that impacts women much more than men.
Yes. So thank you for pulling all that out. And I appreciate you sharing that. And then I would like to know too, how do you view that or feel that all of this combined together fuels domestic abuse?
Yeah. Well, when we see, who holds the power. So I like to ask myself, in these situations, who holds the power? And right now, I believe it's 90. What was it? 89% of evangelical churches are led by men. 89%. And then who's sitting at the table? Who's on the board? Who's the deacons? You know, and when you look at who holds the power, and then you look at who's excluded from that, who's excluded from the decision making, who's excluded from, um, and it's women. It's
Mhm.
women are being annihilated, and yet women are the majority of church attenders. And so it's like, wait, what is happening? What are we doing here to annihilate literally 50% of the image of God? 50% of the workforce to help bring the kingdom of God to earth. Like,
Yeah.
literally cutting our legs out from under us, and then calling it holy, calling it God ordained, when it really is evil infiltrating our churches and just wreaking havoc. And it's not, and again, it's impacting men, but it's really making us more animalistic. It's making us more objectifiers. It's making us more arrogant. That somehow, I mean, I remember when I was a pastor, me and my buddies were all leading the church. Me and a bunch of other white guys, like we all thought the same. It was fun. We had a blast.
Yeah.
And women, you could work at the children's place. You could be the children's pastor. We can't call you pastor. And then you can make us lunch and stuff. Isn't that nice? Like, do you see how derogatory that is and how arrogant that is? That I somehow, because, my anatomy, I have a closer relationship with God, or I'm somehow the gatekeeper. That's insane to me.
Wow. Yes, and I think a lot of that fuels too within men within coercive control within the marriages, and
Mhm.
you're talking about men that have
Exactly.
the power and feel that a lot of times in the marriages that they can hear from God and their wives cannot,
Right.
and they can call the final authority on scripture because they're male and she cannot, and so her voice is suppressed and silenced,
Yeah.
and you can see how that can start within a church. If you're
Yeah.
in a church that views that way, that men are the ultimate authority, men
Right.
can hear from God, women cannot, men are in submission, then when she cries out to her church,
Yes.
help, I'm in abuse, and he's taking scriptures and reading them and threatening to physically harm me or sexually abuse me or whatever way it is,
Right.
it's you're silenced and you're taught to go back to your husband a lot of times, and you're
Or yeah.
left.
Yeah, or just submit more or have more sex, and he'll
Yeah.
be all
And that does not make anything better.
right.
It makes it worse.
Makes it worse. Exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you hear it all the time as well, but I just hear that story so often.
Yes. It's usually the first thing they say is, "Well, are you having sex or are you submitting enough? Are you praying enough?" Like, that's another one too, and it's just like,
Mhm.
no, that's very damaging to God because then you're or damaging to her view of God because now you're taking God and saying that he's on her abuser's side with these teachings,
Yes.
and he's demanding for you to do this to make him stop, and these things are hurting inside her heart so bad. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate you bringing that to light, and I think we do have to um, look at those things and challenge that. Why did we believe? Why would we believe that as a male in a marriage that he would have the final authority or the final word and everything. So
Yes.
mm, women are important and their voices are important too.
And do you see, when we look through power dynamics, do you see how, as a male, I would be unmotivated to change that dynamic?
Right.
Right? I love power, right? Like, I love power. Why would I want to give that up? And yet it's coming out of a place of deep insecurity. It's not coming out of a place of like centeredness, right? It's not coming out of a place of like, oh, I honor my partner as an equal. No, my
Mhm.
partner's less than, and I'm better. And if I was actually honest with myself, then I would say that's what I'm doing. But but I'm not, and then I just blame it on God.
Yes. Yes. And do you feel like have you seen in your practice that the porn and the pornified mindset fuels this entitlement of men who feel that they are superior to women,
Definitely.
which is domestic violence. A lot of times,
Yes.
how that happens is they view themselves as above the woman and using scripture. That's not always the cases,
Right. Because
but
what happens if I've spent, 13 years watching women please me?
Mhm.
Literally with a click, I can make them do what I want them to do, right? And so again, women become just utility. They just become an object to feed my pleasure, what I want. They're no longer human. And so, of course, that's going to breed into our style of relating, and how we relate to the world, that women are here to serve me.
Mm, wow. That's a really good point. And then my question too, I have another one for you. So I have so many questions here. In your practice, how long have you found it takes to overcome the pornified mindset?
Yeah, it really just depends on the dudes. Unfortunately, most men come to see me after their life has blown up, um, and they've lost their family, lost their wives, and then they wake up, and then they begin to mourn, and then they begin to do the hard work it takes. Normally, if they're working hard, coming to the retreats, reading the materials, doing like writing their stories, grieving, like normally it's minimum a year of hard emotional work. But then they can change into a really good and safe man, and yet they still have to deal with the consequences of their actions. And sometimes their marriages are saved. Most of the time, they're not.
Yeah.
Uh, and we teach them to yeah, then that's okay. She deserves to leave because of what you've done, and you can set her free, and you can honor her and take responsibility for your actions, and then choose to live differently from this day on. Choose to live with integrity and no deception.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And we teach our women and men working, or people that are working with men that use coercive control, is that one of the worst things they can do is to do all these things and think they're going to get their marriage
Yeah,
back. Because
exactly.
if they do it all to get their marriage back, it's them following a checklist to get it all done. And then when they get her back, it's boom, they're all back to
Yep. And I've seen it happen before where it just is this quick fix because nobody wants to feel pain. And it's like, actually, you're going to make it worse. This journey is a journey of suffering, of crucifixion. It really is. And that's both for the woman who didn't choose this, but it's because she was in the car when he was driving recklessly and he smashed the car. And it's his responsibility. And yet the woman does have to do her work too because she's been decimated by his betrayals.
Yes. Wow. No, I appreciate you sharing that too. And then also, you're mentioning a lot about grief that they have to walk through. Have you found when men are overcoming porn, do they begin to feel for the first time? And have you seen that men that before they overcome it, they tend to be very much non-emotional?
Oh,
Have you
yeah.
found between that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's again back to the porn, right? They become robots.
Hmm.
Because if I told myself the truth of what I was participating in, how could I, you know, experience pleasure in it? Oh, yes, I'm contributing to sex trafficking. It's like, no, I'm going to lie to myself and say this woman wants me. What it is it's called an eroticized wound. What we do is we're seeking out porn, we're sexualizing our woundedness. And we seek out the porn that meets the wound, whatever that wound is. And so one of the first questions I ask, what type of porn are you using? What's your darkest sexual fantasy? And we start there, and then we go backwards to connect to, okay, how does this connect to your wound? Oh, you're longing for, you want, I won't get too graphic here, but you're longing for, um, you don't like the airbrush pornography, you like the real amateur stuff. Well, what does that speak to? Oh, you didn't have authenticity in your life as a kid. Everybody was fake around you. So you're longing for something real. Tell me about that story. Right? And we can quickly get to the deepest wound of how they were always longing for an authentic relationship and they never had it. So the type of porn always fits the wound.
That is very interesting. And I do want to give a little is unique is that without domestic abuse, question here I want to ask as well is a lot of times I know Tabitha Westbrook talks a lot about this too, is a man can have sexual addiction and not be domestically violent. But if a man has domestic violence and sexual addiction at the same time, domestic abuse always exists. I guess when there's sexual addiction present, there's some form of abuse going on sexually. But if they're also dominating other areas of their life, we're talking finances, isolation, like all the
Mhm.
other power and control wheel, that also takes another, we say 5 years to be able to work through to. So I don't want people to hear this and be like, oh, it's going to be a year and my husband's going to be good. It's like, no, if there's
Mhm.
domestic violence that's present
Sure.
outside of sexual addiction, it takes a good solid 5 years. It takes a men's intervention program and then a good solid 5 years of consistent change before we would even claim that they're safe and not going to be domestically
Sure.
violent.
And what I found is when men do this deep work, let me take this back. Who you are sexually is a reflection of who you are in every area of life. So
Mhm.
if you have a hidden sexuality, then you're going to have other hidden areas in your life. You're going to be messed up financially. You're going to lie in other areas. You're going to be deceitful. it's a window into who you are. And so if you do all that work but you don't deal with the core wounds, it's always going to come back, right? And so that's why we go right to the source of the core wounds, and you find it impacting other areas. Because if you're not a man of integrity in your sexuality, you will not be a man of integrity in your finances. You're not going to be a man of integrity in any other area of life. So it could take you 10 years, it could take you 20 years, but if you don't deal with the actual core, nothing's ever going to change. It's just going to be about behavior modification and white knuckling it.
Yes. Wow. That's just, I love that, because I think so many times women think, oh, pornography is a separate issue and he's still a good person. But I see what you're pulling out here is you're saying if a man is into porn
Mhm.
and into pornified mindset, he has other areas of his life that he does not walk in integrity as
Yeah.
well. And he has other areas of his life that he's hiding and being deceptive in. And it's a kind of like what you're saying is it's a deep porn is a one manifestation, but it's a lot deeper root, and its
Right.
tentacles are leaking into several areas of their life. And
Exactly.
that is something very serious, because I watch a lot of women say, oh, well, it's just porn, but he's such a good man. And it's like,
No.
it's probably affecting multiple areas of their life that they
Yeah.
his
It
life
is.
that they didn't realize.
Yep. Exactly. It is. And if they've cut off parts of themselves, basically, oh, I'm this secret porn user on Wednesday nights at 11 p.m., and then I'm this good Christian guy. Well, who does that say that they are? Well, they're liars, right? That like the core of them is literally cut off. They're not a unified person. They literally wear a mask. They're fake. And that has to be addressed. And somehow they've become okay with being fake. Well, how did you learn that living two different lives that you're a man of integrity?
Wow. That is really good. I'm like, this is I'm enjoying this conversation. And
Mhm.
I have a question here too. For somebody's asking, what is the impact of porn on kids in the marriage? And
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of things too. So I want to hear your perspective on this. Even if the kids don't know,
Yeah.
how does it impact them to
Well,
have a father who looks at porn?
again, if I had a dollar for every time I heard, I found my dad's magazines. I found my dad's stash. I found my dad on the computer. I found his secret folder. I mean, I've heard hundreds of these stories. And so whether they find it or not, it still impacts how they parent because you lose heart. You become numb, like we were talking about earlier. So if you're not full hearted and you come to your kids half numb, you've lost heart. You're going to parent out of that place. You're going to parent out of a place of objectification. And then I hear, I've heard time and time again, well, then, as my daughter grows up, like I can't sexualize her. Yeah, you're terrified of sexualizing your daughter because you literally spent the last 20 years sexualizing every woman you've ever seen. Of course you're terrified of it because now you're about to be exposed because you don't know how to honor beauty without objective. Like all you know how to do is devour women. And now your own daughter's coming of age and she's growing breasts and you're terrified. Well, yeah, because you're about to be exposed because of what you do with a body of a woman. And so it does impact kids. It does impact young boys and young girls tragically, but it's mostly in your presence and taking away your presence, how you look, right? Your eyes. I haven't been able to done research around it yet, but I'm still so intrigued. I can tell so much of a man by his eyes, by the way he looks. There's something about porn that literally causes this type of viewing in some man's eyes, and I can see it within 5 seconds.
Wow.
And
You're gonna have a lot of women that are single messaging you, being like, "Hey, can you test out these men?" I'm sorry. That's what I think of my mind.
Well,
Tell me.
again, I haven't perfected that yet, so I'm not gonna claim that anywhere else but here, but I'm seeing it. Like, what is that with their eyes? Oh, there's something there, something I don't trust. There's something dangerous there. There's
Mhm.
something you have been a voyeur. Um, you have consumed in this way that's dark, and you can see it. It marks them.
Yes. Yes, I will 100% agree with that. And so I've definitely seen that in people's eyes before. And you feel like, oh, I'm being wrong to feel that. This can't be true. But
Right.
usually if I wait around, I'm like, oh. what I sensed was really true. This person really did have this issue. It comes out later in life.
Right.
Um, but wow, I'm just, yeah, this has been amazing. And I love what you shared that this affects how they view their children and how they view their daughters and how they parent. And our story that's actually coming out tomorrow, I'll go ahead and I'll post it tomorrow morning, is a story of a woman who husband looked at porn and how
Mm.
much it damaged her children because he was aloof and neglected and treated his daughter terribly because of this. And it happens again and again of they can't relate rightly to their children, especially their daughters. They tend to either sometimes look at their daughters as surrogate, a lot of times partners. And it sounds terrible, and because they feel like they can't meet from their wife the emotional needs they need to get, so they look to their daughters, or they tend to disgrace their daughters the same as their mothers. It kind of goes to one extreme and the other a lot of times. That's just things that I've seen.
Exactly. Another way to put it is I feel so much shame that I'm sexualizing my own daughter. So I am going to just completely ignore you.
Yes.
Right. And so it's basically because of our own unprocessed shame that we then project onto our daughters, that we make them pay for our own shame.
So this woman is saying here, I'm not going to read her name, but she says, my ex-husband would hold hands with my oldest daughter and walk ahead of me. A friend commented watching them and said, they look like they're in a relationship. Now my oldest daughter has nothing to do with him, and rightly so.
Yep. It's a heartbreaking story.
Yes. And so I appreciate you sharing this. And I just have another question. I feel like it's on my mind. Maybe somebody needs to hear this. And there's one more we're closing out with too. But it's if I want to say it's not enough for a man to not look at porn. I have definitely seen that. And they have to get rid of this pornified mindset. So from what I'm understanding, if until they deal with their deep core of what's causing them to objectify, well, objectification is still a choice, but going down to the deep core woundings,
Yeah.
being able to learn to walk in integrity sexually,
Right.
it still affects every area of their life, even if they're not looking at it. Turning off the pictures of women is not enough. Can you speak just a
That's
little bit more
yeah,
to
that's
that?
that's literally just step one, right? To
Mhm.
stop the behavior, to become to have a porn-free world, right? And then I have literally so many men. Well, I'm not looking at porn. I'm just looking at women in bathing suits on Instagram. I'm just looking at. It's just like no, like our definition of pornography has to be much larger. It doesn't have to be naked women. Are you consuming women? Are you objectifying women? Yes or no? Right then, okay. So you're still using. Okay, so you still haven't addressed what's going on. Your entitlement over women. You still haven't addressed the issues at play that need to be addressed. And so yeah, it takes a long time to change that mindset. But again, great books to read. My books, Psychology of Porn, Sexually Healthy Man, How Not to Be an Ass, Jay Stringer's book, Unwanted, Michael Cusack's book, Surfing for God. All these are good resources, but you got to begin to get, Sheila Gregoire's work is awesome. But you got to begin to
Yes.
get good resources and not just, again, resources that just affirm the porn-like mindset.
And do you find that men that a lot of times maybe have stopped looking at pictures and do looking at just stuff, they also bring this into their marriages and pornify their wives
Yes.
as well? And we have a lot of women come and they say, I feel my husband's lusting after me. And the church literally will laugh at that and be like, no, he's supposed to. But what she's trying to communicate is, I feel objectified in my marriage. I feel like a piece of garbage or a piece of meat to him in the way that he treats me sexually,
Yep.
but they don't know how to express it. Now the words are coming out. We have things to say. But could you talk just a tiny bit into that too? I'm sorry if I'm going on and on. And he does have a Facebook page. I'll link it on here so somebody ask you about that.
Yeah. No, that is very, very common. On my website, you can read the article "Christ-like or Porn-like," and you can find that. It's also in my book, "How Not to Be an Ass." But that is a very common thing, because again, these men are growing up with this mindset, never having to deal with it. They're basically just going to replace you with porn. Like, you become an object of their desire, and it doesn't feel good.
No.
Partnership feels good. Love is giving and receiving pleasure, right? There's a mutuality there. Sex is supposed to be this beautiful give and take, this place of giving and receiving, and yet In porn, it's just about me, right? It's just about serving me. Um, oh, I'm more visual. I'm more, sexual. No, no, you're not. I believe the clitoris has 10,000 nerve endings. Male penis is like 3,000. So it's like actually women are more sexual. But you didn't grow up as a woman, and you didn't grow up in a patriarchal society, and you didn't grow up where 1 in 3 women are sexually abused.
Mhm.
You didn't grow up in that. So yeah, maybe your wife is shut down because she's been harmed and abused. 1 in 4 women are in domestic violent relationships, and there's been a war against the feminine. And until you realize that, you can't truly know what your wife is bearing, and you just say she's not sexual. Er, wrong.
Yes.
I get
I
fired.
love it. And then I got another question for you. It's on my mind. I feel like must be people are going to watch this, and God's putting these questions in my mind. What do you say to the woman that's watching, and she's like, "Yes, my husband's into this, and I'm going to get him to stop looking at porn." What have you found your personal experience in this? And I kind of probably know what your answer is going to be, but this is just from coming from your
Mhm.
perspective. Can you force a husband to change his pornified mindset? Can you
Yeah.
force somebody to stop? How does that process work?
I mean, it's kind of like, what you're describing is kind of like, uh, I'm giving my husband's wielding a baseball bat, and he continues to break my kneecaps. And I'm just going to continue to hope that he stops, or I'm going to try to show him how to use the baseball bat as he's literally hitting you. Like that's not okay. Porn is abuse. Porn is cheating on you. So, wait, you want him to respect you while you disrespect yourself? While you just continue to say, it's okay. Well, I hope he chooses me. Like, no, you're worth so much more.
Mhm,
You're worth being chosen.
mhm.
You're worth loving, and he doesn't love you. He's literally wants to use you. And so I would say for a woman, no, you need to run. You need to get safe. You need to demand sobriety. You need to demand that he go get help. And if he doesn't want to, guess what? You're not going to make him. We don't even, women email us all the time. My husband, we just say, have your husband email us. Have him set up at his own appointment. You're not his mommy.
Mhm.
Right? Like women are so desperate to be loved, so they end up over functioning. And then what that does is actually just causes him to continue to underfunction. And he already is operating like a 12-year-old boy. So he doesn't need more enabling, right? He actually needs to be let go. He needs to suffer and he needs to die. He needs to bleed. He needs to
Yes.
feel the loss of what his actions have done. And he doesn't need just another woman to protect him and to use another woman to shield him from the consequences of his own behavior.
Wow. That was very well said. And just to recap that is what you're saying is porn is serious. And
Mhm.
if it's in a marriage, it's not just porn is just affecting this one area of your life, the secretive. I'm just recapping this for everybody.
Yeah.
Uh, is that it affects several areas of your life. It affects your finances. If there's deception in this area, it affects deception in several areas of your life, and it filters over. It filters in your parenting, and
Yep.
this is a very serious issue, and you
And
will
it's
not get
not
it to change.
exactly. It's not just every man's battle. It is domestic terrorism.
Yes. Yes, and I'm so grateful that people are finally speaking out and pulling scientific research and psychology of like, this is not biblically based anyway, that this is every man's battle, that every man struggles with this, and every man looks at porn because every man doesn't. This
Right.
is actually what we've set up for ourselves in society to say, this is the standard we've set for you. But really, God's standard is so much greater, and there is so
Right.
much more freedom in Christ in that.
Yep. Exactly. And there's this whole other mindset of, oh, I relapsed again today. Oh, I relapsed. And it's just like, wait, the guys that I'm working with aren't relapsing. Like what? Wait, what? I mean, again, some of them are, but it's
Mhm.
like, are we actually beginning to take serious like what's happening? It's not just a relapse. It's a, you know, it's a curse to your wife. So what I want you to do is I want you to walk up to your wife and I want you to stick a middle finger. Like what if you actually cursed your wife? Does that make sense? Like we actually need to heighten it to say, what are you doing? It's not just a casual porn. You are literally cheating on your wife. You're saying, I hate you. I hate you. Like that to me feels much different than just, oh, I relapsed again. Uh-oh.
Sorry, it's not funny. So, yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that analogy. That was very good, and that is very true. And I think seeing the depths of that, and a man that loves God and is a sexually healthy man, well, is going to feel bad about cursing his wife and doing
Exactly.
something that wrong. Men who are abusive, who are domestically abusive, course of control, they won't care, and they'll just be like finding another reason to deceive and to cover that up and to say, well, she did this and blame shift. And that's when you know you've got a serious problem. This person is not open to change.
Right.
So thank you. And then I wanted to ask too, what would you say to pastors and ministry leaders on the importance of confronting porn and a pornified mindset within their own lives and calling others into accountability as well?
Well, you're not going to teach about it if you're also sexually unhealthy, right? You're not going to talk about it from the pulpit if you're hiding your own shame. So get healthy first. Deal with your own stuff first. Address it, and then the more healthy you get, you're gonna want to talk about it. You're gonna want to speak on it because that's what you're beginning to be passionate about. So instead of um, not addressing your own issues, address your own wounds. Address the harm that's been happening on a large scale, where scripture has been replaced by patriarchal ideas. Um, that is what my call would be to pastors, because this needs to be talked about. If literally 25% of your congregation had cancer,
Mm.
don't you think you'd be talking a lot about cancer, the grief that comes with cancer? And yet 25% of women sitting in the pews, and again, 1 in 3 women sexual abuse. Like, are you not going to be talking about that if that many people suffer with a certain ailment in your church? Would you not be addressing that from the pulpit? It's rampant, and yet there's a stigma. So let's bust the stigma. Let's talk about it. But you can't talk about it if you first haven't taken that journey yourself.
Thank you. Wow. Wow. Yes. 1 in 3 women are impacted by domestic abuse, and it's within the church as well. And so I appreciate you bringing that out. 25% of women sitting in their pews are
Yeah.
impacted by this. And even more, probably percentage are impacted by their husbands looking at porn as well.
That's more like 70, I think, or at least that's again Barna's study. I think there's been other studies that it's not quite cut and dry, but yeah, at least 70 something percent of Christian men have had some type of relationship with pornography.
And I think so many pastors, sometimes I think it feels scary to address this because they think, oh, it's going to destroy marriages and everybody's going to come out of the woodwork. But in reality, Christ calls us and it's invited us into a happy, holy marriage. And that includes a marriage free of abuse and free of porn. And when we hold God's standards for marriage at a high level, it leads people up to a higher level in their standards for their marriage.
Yes.
They tolerate, and it produces happy, whole, healthy marriages
Right.
that are honoring to Christ versus people surviving.
Yeah, what I like to say is God is truth. So the more we live in truth, the more we experience God. So if you think protecting lies is going to make you experience God, no, like exposing all the lies gets us closer to God. It's living in truth because God is truth.
Yes. Thank you. This has been such a wonderful conversation today. I have loved it so much, and I appreciate you and the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for joining us here today. I am very grateful you came.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Yes, and then I want to close out once again that it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are in the middle of fundraising. So right now we are at about 15,000 of our goal of 140,000, but we have a $40,000 matching grant that is happening. So we encourage you to partner with us. We do partner with churches, and we walk alongside churches. For $400, we can train one church. We can host a Protect the Flock
Mhm.
training to be able to train one church in how to understand the dynamics, of course, of control. And then we also offer church partnership, and they can walk alongside your church to help them be able to understand the difference between a marriage counseling, marriage situation that is fixable and a domestic violence. And so we offer free consultations with our church partnership liaisons, as well as helping you implement an 8-step process to become a safe, healthy church. But all that is done because people partner with us. And so
Yes.
we invite you today to partner alongside us so that we can continue to serve the 1 out of 3 women impacted by domestic abuse.
Yes, please support Called to Peace Ministries and all that they're doing in this vital work. Please support them.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and hope everybody has a wonderful day. And I'll drop a link to Andrew Bauman's Facebook page and the comments, and that way you can find him on Facebook. I saw somebody ask about that as well. All right.